Hello and welcome to Sunday's Hotline Live with Record Sport. My name is Daniel Caw and I'm delighted to be joined by the one and only Keith Jackson. Keith, how's it going?
Yes, very well. As you can see, I'm Masters ready.
And we're also joined all the way from Pittodrie by the one and only Craig Swan. Swanee, how's it going?
Yeah, okay, boys. How are you?
Very good, thanks. Very good. Pittodrie is obviously the place to start. I don't even know where to start though. What a game. Again, Rangers somehow fight back.
Yeah, it was an incredible match. Aberdeen Rangers games, it doesn't matter whether people call them dead rubbers or end of season affairs or they don't count for anything. It really doesn't make any difference. It really lets you down, Aberdeen Rangers, and the way the whole afternoon just turned out was just mad in some ways. To be perfectly honest with you, really couldn't see that finale coming. But I'm sure you'll get on to Aberdeen later. But they just paid the price for not putting the game to bed when they really should have done.
But Swanee, it just felt like it was going to be a crazy day from the moment you saw the Rangers team sheet.
Yeah,
because he's basically sent out the reserves, isn't he?
Yeah, it was an interesting one because obviously there was a suspicion leaving Ibrox on Thursday night after the first leg of the Athletic Bilbao game that changes were going to be made. There was obviously guys were going, when Dujon Sterling had gone down, there was, guys were going to be suspended. There was obviously, it was very difficult for Barry Ferguson to take risks with certain players. Listen, I see both sides of the coin. Me personally, I completely understood it because Rangers can't win the league. Can't win it. Wouldn't matter if they won today. It doesn't matter. They're not going to win the league. This second leg tie at this quarter final is everything. And Rangers needed to make sure all their key men were available. Now, I understand people on the other side of the fence that will say, well, the manager can't sit at a table and demand this and that from every single fixture, and you can't pick and choose when you're a Rangers player if you're quite clearly then choosing to rest players. You can dress it up any way you like. I'm giving people opportunities. I'm doing this. You're basically leaving out some of your best players.
Yeah.
So, and I also hear these people who go, understandably, I've paid X amount of quid to come up here and I've paid for a ticket and Rangers should be paying for every game. I get all of that side of it as well, if anybody wanted to complain about that. But my personal view is I think Barry Ferguson did the right thing, and that would even have been had Rangers lost the game. Because, as I say, the league is gone. The league is gone for Rangers. Celtic
and second place is secure.
And this get would be everything.
Keith, I mean, actually, Swanee, I'll come to you first. What was the atmosphere like when that Hagi goal went in? Because I imagine if you're an Aberdeen fan, you must have been absolutely sick.
Yeah, there was. I'm never sure how you describe this, but I've often heard it written the sound of the backs of seats, plastic on plastic. just Aberdeen fans just sickened, and understandably so. It was just, the thing is, sometimes in these situations, there's a sense that you can see it coming, and I couldn't see it coming. I've got to be honest. I thought Rangers got it back to 2-1, and then I thought Aberdeen really regained a grip again. And they looked pretty much as though they were seeing it out without much of an issue. I really couldn't see it coming. And I don't think many of the... Sometimes, both of you boys will have been to many games where there's an anxiousness in the stadium. You can feel it. Every time, when Rangers are going back up the pitch again. That wasn't really there. Because I think Aberdeen were pretty much in control. They had it under control. They spent a lot of the last 15 minutes of the game in the Rangers half of the pitch. And obviously, they thought they'd made it 3-1 as well, obviously, for the Kevin Nisbet goal that didn't stand. So there wasn't a lot of nervousness around. It was just a hell of a sucker punch that for Aberdeen, a real sore one.
Just to clarify on that disallowed handball goal, rather, it was handball, wasn't it? It was the right call.
Yeah.
Aye.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure. Listen, I'm not absolutely expert in the rule book, but his arm was by his side. But I think is it because it's literally led to the goal. It's the last touch before he then thrashes into the net. That's where it becomes. It doesn't matter where your arm is. So we managed to see a replay of that at the game. As soon as you saw it, you kind of thought, yeah, that's going to be ruled out. So that wasn't. I don't think there was much debate in that one. I'm sure people will be on to argue that there was.
I'm sure.
Do you know what's astonishing though, Swanee, is Rangers now opponent 2. It's just it seems to be par for the course now. They're going 2-0 down in every game. I don't know about you, Swanee. I have to tell you, I I think the problems that Harry is trying to solve. He can't trust his team to go out to perform until they're 2-0 down. But then the flip side of it is, would they have fought back from 2 goals behind in these games if it wasn't for the fact that they've got such a feisty guy full of fire and energy on the sidelines? I don't know. It's becoming a real quandary, isn't it?
I have to be honest with you, I didn't get all of that because I don't know if you can hear the guy manicuring the pitch behind me. But I believe, Keith, you were suggesting that Rangers falling 2-0 down again, you can't trust them. Why do they keep doing that? And then, if that's what the question was, I think there's mitigating circumstances today, and the fact there was so many changes made to the Rangers team. I think they're very disjointed, and guys have just pitched in, guys like Oscar Cortes and Fernandez, and they haven't played. So it's probably more understandable today in the way that happened. And I think most of us can understand that it was more senior figures that came off the bench were the ones that kind of rescued it in the end. Obviously, the guys involved in the goal. But I wouldn't batch this one with the other ones, if that makes sense, because I think the changes made to the Rangers team today make it slightly different to the rest of them, when there has been occasions when the proper first choice team, as you would call it, would go out and fail to deliver at the beginning of a game, whereas today I think there was a few guys had some valid excuses. I think guys like Clinton and Ciala and boys like that have played for ages. So, and plus there's also a bit of a bounce factor. If you're an Aberdeen player, you would have sensed that. You would have seen the Rangers team sheet and thought, today's the day. And there was so many guys in positions where Ross McCausland at right wing back, awful time against Topi Keskin, and young Curtis on the other side was finding it hard going against Shane Morris as well. It was never going to be easy for Rangers to start well. So, as I said, Rangers deserve a great deal of credit for the resilience, for coming back, the senior guys coming on. But Jimmy Tilley will be absolutely sick about the goal that they lost. Aberdeen lost at the start of the second half. I mean, that's a nothing goal to give away. That is in complete control of that situation, and just the timing of it. Most people basically sat down for the second half, and right away you put scoreline pressure back onto the game for yourselves. Only takes one moment. We saw what happened. A
good shot in the arm for Hibs ahead of kick-off time against Dundee this afternoon, isn't it? That what they thought was going to be 3 points for Aberdeen becomes 1, and almost the last kick of the ball.
Yeah, and I'm sure they would have been aware of it. I'm sure. I mean, they always tell you, we don't know, we don't pay attention to what's happening, we concentrate on ourselves. They'll be completely aware of what happened. If we told you, I would be 100% sure of that.
Swanee, there was a little bit of handbags at the final whistle between, I think it was Graham Shinney and Barry Ferguson. I mean, was it just handbags? Can you tell us any more about that?
Or just lawnmowers again. It was kind of hard for me to. In fairness, Daniel, there was more than handbags in the press boxes. Entire match reports were being ripped up after the famous success and Rangers' mistake and dropping players and changing players and people standing up. So, if you would like me to give you exact details on that incident, I'll leave it to you that were watching it on the TV. But, tensions are going to run high in games like this. If you get an ending like that, people are going to get irritated. It's just, you don't listen. We always go on about wanting emotion in football. We want emotion in the game. Yeah, guys get a bit hit up, so they should. That's what you want. Yeah. So, I don't think. Let's not have any major debate. Handbag gate. let's not backing down that road.
Did anyone scoosh anyone, Swanee?
No.
Sadly not.
I was going to say something and I just thought, no, I'm just not going to.
So what you're telling us is...
Something entered my head and I just thought, no.
What you're telling us is that no fan went home from the football with slightly damp trousers today?
Yeah, no.
Sadly. Tell me this, Swanee, any sign of...
No, listen, like I say, sorry Keith, go on.
I've seen any sign of Andrew Kavanagh in amongst the dignitaries?
Well, I didn't notice, I have to say, but my eyes were on the game. I didn't see. It's kind of difficult here at Aberdeen to see along, the setup of the stadium and where you are. You're on the right-hand side of the pitch. You're towards the goal on the...
Yeah.
You're towards the end where none of the goals were scored, entertainingly enough. So, no, I didn't. I'd be lying if I said I noticed.
Right, okay, because obviously we know that he was in the country for the first leg of the Athletic Bilbao.
Yeah, he was at the Athletic Bilbao game, wasn't he? Yeah.
So I would have thought. I think he's quite enjoying it. They obviously went to Celtic Park after the second leg against Fenerbahce at Ibrox. So it'll be interesting. He might be on a little kind of takeover tour of Scotland stadiums at the minute. I wouldn't have been surprised if he'd been up at Pittodrie today. But as you said, I know how difficult it is actually in terms of the actual geography of that main stand to be able to see down the director's box. But it'll be interesting to see if any photographs emerge. Because this whole thing, you get the feeling that he's arrived back in Scotland at this time because it's getting really close now. And we've been talking about for a while that the plan, I think, from the American side of things was to get it all sealed off, tied up before the end of April. So you get the feeling that we're getting into the end game now.
Swanee, before we let you go, I'm going to put you in the spot. You know, I like putting people in the spot. Do you think Barry Ferguson's 9 changes today will bear fruit on Thursday night?
Before you put me on the spot, Daniel.
Go on.
Give me 20 seconds to the lawnmowers go. I'm right there, right? So I could actually be doing making in about my hair, actually.
Didn't want to say Swan.
Right. 3, 2, 1, go.
I was just saying, do you think they'll get through on Thursday against Bilbao? Do you think the changes today will bear fruit in Spain on Thursday?
I think the changes will certainly. I think the changes will certainly help in the fact that some guys will be freshened up, and just simply by the fact that guys will be available. I mean, as I say, I don't think Barry Ferguson could have taken any chances today. Risking a Nico Raskan today, for example, who's been Rangers' best player for the last few weeks, and he pulls a hamstring today. In the game, it's essentially nothing. So, you know, once he gets in and assesses the bodies and makes sure that the senior guys who did have to come on, that there's no issues, and whoever he wants to be in the starting team are going to be available. Listen, I find this whole game on Thursday night fascinating because, well, you sense that the team that's high up in La Liga, we talked about it before the first leg, you would expect them on their own patch to be good, but Rangers' away form in Europe is just so impressive. And when we watched Athletic Bilbao the other night, we know that they don't score a lot of goals. I think we discussed that.
Yeah.
They look like a team. Rangers lost a man early and all of a sudden had to sit back in the game. They just had to 2 banks and just sit. Say, there you go, lads, you have the ball. Come and break us down. And they didn't look like they were comfortable doing it. They looked to me like the team that would like to play on a counter a bit like Rangers do when they play in Europe now. I don't know how that's going to translate to Thursday night. But they didn't look to me like they were carving chance after chance. Well, they didn't. And they had all of the ball on a man advantage and they couldn't do anything with it, really. So, I don't know. I don't think this might be as clear-cut as a lot of people think it might be. Hand on heart, if it was my last quid, then after my performance at the Scottish Grand National yesterday, Keith, what I do with my last quid's not always the best guide, but responsibly. With your last quid, you would say Bilbao will probably go through on home soil, but it is by no means a foregone conclusion. You can see Rangers making a real fight of this.
Oh, definitely not. Swanee, thank you so much for joining us from Pittodrie. I'll let you go and battle with the lawnmowers now. Maybe get yourself a wee haircut before you get up the road.
Yeah, trimmer on it.
Thank you, boys. See you later.
Craig Swan there from Pittodrie, Keith.
Yeah, I saw Swanee yesterday at Air Races. He was busy working and I was busy enjoying hospitality, the good people of Corals, bookmakers. It was splendid, and I had Captain Cody in the National, so good day.
Very nice. A well-earned day off.
Yeah. They don't come around often, Daniel.
Let me throw a couple of comments at you that are coming in, because, I mean, I don't know about you, I thought Rangers fans would be quite jubilant after that, last-minute goal. Drew McMaster says, though Barry Ferguson's league record is honking, 1 fluke Euro win, great player, poor manager, and he's not the future. Dennis Minnis says, an experienced manager would have took McCausland off winning a yellow card. That's why Ferguson won't get the job full-time. He's clueless tactically. Of course, there are some Rangers fans who are absolutely buzzing. If I can find them. Alistair says...
Ridiculously harsh.
Alistair says, our B team stopped Celtic winning the league. How embarrassing. Although Stefan changed back saying, simply delaying the inevitable, champions again, 4 in a row. But aye, you mentioned it yourself, Keith. 7 games in a row now, domestically, Rangers have conceded at least 2 goals. And of course, been 2 down in a lot of them. That must be concern for Barry Ferguson. And
everything's a concern right now. And this goes back to, was it after the Hibs game, Dan? Kind of said to you, my feeling was that you can't now judge them on results. Mm-hmm. It's such a curious position that you're in with Barry Ferguson, or that he's in right now, because you can't have him held as a hostage to fate where these players are concerned that are quite clearly untrustworthy. They're not a great bunch of professionals. So all you can kind of, how do you take a yardstick, measuring stick to this? I think you just look and you have to assess with your own eyes, do you think that these guys are making a difference? Do you see what they're trying to do? The direction that they're trying to move the team? And do you then trust them to implement their own ideas and be put in charge of it over the summer? For me, it's a yes. For me, I've seen enough. And I keep going back to about, it's not another rebuild that's required this summer. It's a restoration job. And if you're going to restore something, you need to have a very good idea in your mind of what exactly it is that it's meant to look like when the job's done, what this restoration looks like. These guys are the guys that absolutely know that inside and out. And I think there's a danger if Rangers go another way at this specific moment in time, they could just drift again and drift away from, and they've been in drift mode now for quite some considerable time. And look what it's got them. I've mentioned it before that the Rangers fans will never say that their teams are relevant because their team means everything to them, right? So I get that, and it's an emotive word to use, but I keep coming back to it. In terms of the title, domestic title, they have rendered themselves an irrelevance. It's one title won in 14 years. Celtic are winning that 13-1. So they for me, they really need urgent action. You kind of look at the Kavanagh 49ers takeover. I think there's a bit of frustration growing that it's not, not yet all signed and sealed. But you would hope from a Rangers perspective that business gets concluded soon, and soon enough that it gives Andrew Kavanagh time to implement whatever his ideas are for next season. For me, I think the safe thing right now for him, because there's so much work to do, would be to sit Barry Ferguson and his coaching staff down and say, look, you guys are, we can see the effort and the energy that you're putting into this. We obviously can't say you're the future. We can't give you 5-year deals. What would be so wrong about giving them a 1-year rolling contract? Because at least you give yourself a fighting chance of starting next season on the front foot. And the longer it goes, with no activity, no strategy, no sort of clear sign of direction, the more chance it is that they just drift again into next season. And Celtic will do what they always do. They'll hit the ground running. Brendan Rodgers will make improvements over the summer. Celtic will strengthen. And, it's becoming a very familiar story. Rangers need to try to do something about, breaking up this monotony. It's interesting, because Swanee, I think he's quite right in what he says. I give Rangers a real chance on Thursday night, because I completely agree with Swanee. Bilbao didn't look that comfortable for, yes, they had a load of possession in the game, plenty of the ball, but they never really looked like hurting Rangers. They never really looked like getting through. Rangers will strengthen in terms of the starting lineup. John Souttar will come back in defensively. They'll be stronger. But this Rangers side is built to play counter-attack European football away from home. And I can see Rangers scoring over there. So you almost wonder, if Rangers could get through this, get to a semi-final, then who knows what happens when you get to a semi-final. Is it conceivable somewhere in the wildest imagination that Barry Ferguson wins a European competition for Rangers, doesn't get a contract, just basically does a mic drop and gets a statue at the end of the season. Is that what we're heading? It's the greatest mic drop in managerial history.
If he could do that, that would be pretty remarkable. Andy in the comment section says, in reference to our chat about Barry Ferguson, football managers are only judged on results.
No,
but I would come back to that.
This is what I'm saying. This is a peculiar situation. Normally, you would say, of course, that's right. But Barry Ferguson has went into a situation here. Someone else's group of players is, in fact, 3 or 4 previous managers that have put this group of players together. I've always referred to Sunderland as the poster boys for this. When you get a squad which has been built by 4, 5, 6, 7 different managers, 7 different managers' signings in the one dressing room, it's a recipe for disaster. And look how it's worked for Sunderland. They disappeared off the map. There's a bit of that about this Rangers squad at the minute. So what you've got to do, in my opinion anyway, is you've just got to make an assessment on Barry Ferguson, his coaching staff. Do you trust them? Do you think that they look like the right men for the job and that they know how to take Rangers forward and the direction of travel? Are you satisfied with that? I am. I think they are ideally positioned at this moment in time. Other people won't. Other people will look at it and say, no, they want a big name or a more experienced manager, or I don't know. But for me, that would be the danger, that Rangers start drifting away, because I can see what they're trying to achieve. They're trying to drag the club back to something that looks a little bit more familiar to them, resembles the kind of Rangers that they remember, and that's when Rangers were competitive.
As if we didn't need a reminder today, Keith, but there are so many players there that just aren't Rangers players. They just aren't up to it. They're just not at the standard.
And that's what I'm saying. So that on this one occasion, this is a really peculiar set of circumstances. You can't judge Barry Ferguson and his coaching staff on the results, because it's really difficult to see any manager making that much of a difference. What they can't be blamed for is the fact that these guys are in there. They've just got to deal with it. And yeah, I mean, people will look and say, well, conceding 2 goals in almost every game. But I think that the main thing for Rangers is that they have sort of reconnected the side with the supporters, because the whole thing was broken. I think Barry Ferguson would acknowledge, and he can't do so publicly, but I think he'd probably acknowledge the whole squad needs blown up. So, if that's what the requirement is, one, you can't really judge on performances and results as they happen, but you can see a pattern, and you can see that, as I said, the support has reconnected with the team. The team is starting to show a level of desire and passion, and even Barry Ferguson coming on the pitch there at the end, and the fact that he's protecting his players. And, if that means he pulls out a handbag and presents it to a couple of Aberdeen players, then so be it. There's a bit of fire there. And I know it's a very simple base sort of level to say, well, they're passionate. But that is an improvement from what has gone before. If you're a professional and you don't really care that much about the job that you're doing, you'll end up with bad results. If you're a professional and at least you've got a bit of desire and hunger about you, you've got a better chance, haven't you? And that's a very sort of rudimentary approach, but it's a necessary first step where this Rangers squad is concerned. There has to be a bit of fire in their bellies, because it wasn't there previously.
Keith, I know yesterday you were obviously at the Scottish Grand National, filling your pockets, but Celtic yesterday, I saw the Celtic game.
I saw it when I got home last night, yeah.
Celtic were absolutely incredible yesterday. What a way to kind of hit back after the St Johnstone defeat last week.
Daniel, what have I just said there about lighting a fire in your belly? Brendan Rodgers, and we talked about this very deliberately, very cleverly, came out. He took aim at his players at McDermott Park, and he fired a couple of warning shots right across the dressing room. And he did it for a reason, as he always does. There's always a bit of real calm and consideration goes into whatever it does, or whatever he does and whatever he says. And he aimed that very clearly at his players because of exactly that. He wanted to get the response. He wanted to get them back to the levels that they've been at, spent most of the season at, and that's exactly what he got at the weekend. They were absolutely I think Derek McInnes admitted it as well. There is nothing anybody can do to stop Celtic when they're at that level. Nothing anybody in this country can do about it.
I thought Hatate was different class. Thought he was by far the best player on the pitch. And I'll put this to you as well. Carter Vickers' goal of the season. You having that?
Oh, Gaka, wasn't it? Jeez, that was hit. But yeah, I mean that's what Celtic are. You know, that's your 5-star kind of standard Celtic performance. They have sort of veered off course a little bit from that over the last few weeks. I think it's perfectly understandable because, as I said previously, it's really difficult to sort of recreate the extra bit of edge that you need, competitive edge when you're going toe to toe with somebody else to win a title. They haven't had that. They haven't had that extra motivation. And, you know, whether it's subconscious or not, I think it does have an effect. And that's why Brendan Rodgers spoke last week as strongly as he did. Because if the motivation wasn't going to be there purely from, a nip and tuck position at the top of the table, which it's not, then it has to come from somewhere else. So if the manager's throwing down the gauntlet saying, well, listen, if you guys don't realise that we have to stick to standards at this club, then you'll not be here. So that's for the motivation. And it was clever from Rodgers. He got exactly the response he was looking for. And that's Celtic firing all cylinders now, heading into Scottish Cup semi-final. So they almost got their title delivered today. If it wasn't for the last kick of the ball from Yanis Hadji, they would have done. So the title will come eventually. But the title will be, you know, they'll raise that and they'll make it a treble by winning the Scottish Cup as well. And that is as much as Celtic can do. Can't do any more than that. And I think Brendan Rodgers just wants them to do it in a bit of style between now and the end of the campaign. And I think that's what you'll see. And by returning to their proper level yesterday, that's the way that Brendan Rodgers will intend, you know, going out. He'll want to go out this season with a real bang.
The only slight asterisk to yesterday's display I would put to you was Adam Idah, who started the game. We've had a lot of comments though. Adam Idah for $9.5 million or Danilo and Cortez for the same price, Hoopsaholic says. He didn't have the best of games, and I know social media isn't the be-all and end-all, but he took a lot of stick on X last night. And I don't even really know what I'm asking you. It's clear he's not hit the heights of last season. A lot of people saying they'd cash in on him this summer.
I don't know what you would cash.
That's a bit harsh.
You're not going to be able to cash in on him. If you paid £9.5 million, it's not cashing in; it's cutting losses.
Aye, of course, aye. Sorry,
because you're not going to turn a profit on him. Not this version of Adam either. He's really frustrating me, and I don't know if it's just his personality. He's just maybe a big laid back kind of guy. But I want to see, you know, a fire in his belly. I want to see how much it matters to him, because I keep looking at him and I keep getting the impression you're happy just coasting, big man.
Aye.
You're happy to coast. You're happy to be here. You're happy to be part of it. You're not bothered if you're starting. You know, you surely when Kyogo moves on, you think that should light a fire inside. Think, I'm going to make this position my own. What an opportunity. I'm now going to be Celtic's main striker. And within a matter of, you know, a couple of games, he's already back in his box, sitting on the bench.
Aye.
And I haven't seen a determination from him to turn that around, which makes me again, and I hope I'm not doing him a disservice, but he just looks like he's coasting. And you kind of want to give him a bit of a shake and say, listen, big man, do you realise what an opportunity this is? Do you realise how lucky you are and what you can achieve if you nail down a regular starting place on this side? What you can give the team, what the team can give to you, you know, the trophies, the enjoyment. There's so much there for him. But I kind of look at him and I think he's almost like shrugging his shoulders a little bit and not really prepared to reach out and grab what's there for him. And I think the Celtic fans will get frustrated by that. And I think what Adam Idah really needs to be careful is you'll not be allowed to coast at that club. And so if there isn't a determination there, if he's not prepared to dig deep, to try and better himself and get himself a regular place in the starting 11, he will fall by the wayside. It doesn't matter that Celtic have had to pay £9.5 million from him. As I said, they will reach the point where they go, do you know what? We could cut our losses here, try and reclaim as much as we can possibly recoup from a sale, and then use it and spend it on someone that's actually going to really add to the options and add to the attacking threat that Celtic carry. Right now, it just looks a bit lacklustre to me.
Yeah. Kaiser in the comment section backs you up by saying Idah has all the assets to be a monster with a bit of application.
Totally believe that. And more so, it doesn't matter what I think or what the comment there says. That's what Brendan Rodgers believed he was getting.
Aye.
When he signed Adam Idah, because he knows he's got all the tools are there.
The Hoopsaholic, though, says we never should have signed them. Supporter pressure after the final. If he played like he did at Villa every week, he'd be fine. But he just dips in and out when he wants. And I think that's probably a fair reflection of the last few months for Adam Idah. That's
what I'm saying. You just feel as if, you know, and nobody will be trying harder than Brendan Rodgers in terms of motivation and, you know, and saying all the right messaging. And that will be coming from the manager, because the manager knows that there is a serious player to be had here. But it's how much is Adam Idah willing to give? That's the question mark that I kind of get every time I look at him. Are you really busting a gut here, big man? Or could you give a wee bit more than you actually are? And you know, if he's not, if he is a big laid back sort of guy, I get it, that's fine. But there has to be a desire there. If you're operating without the hunger and the desire, then you will become an also-ran.
Elsewhere, Keith, other big news in the Premiership yesterday. The race for the top six was concluded. Hearts and Motherwell playing out a 0-0 draw, which didn't suit either of them. And St Mirren sneaking in for the third consecutive season in the top six. They celebrated like they won the World Cup, but fair play to them. That is a big achievement. Aye.
Good on them. Right, now, a couple of things. First of all, congratulations to St Mirren, because they've upset the odds once again. They've got no right to be finishing in the top six, never mind 3 seasons in the trot. It's absolutely tremendous achievement from them and from Stephen Robertson, who really is getting a tune out of these players. And it's becoming such a difficult place to go. And they deserve all the credit now, and they work so hard as a team. And they've got what they deserved from this season by finishing top six. And they were celebrating. But Daniel, you've got to look at it. There's not a lot in it in terms of points from 6th position down to 12th position right now.
No.
And certainly not to 11th position. So no wonder they're celebrating, because they know they've just extricated themselves from what could become a real dogfight between now and the end of the season. And Hearts are now in that dogfight. And this is the second point that we have to make. This is a scandalous result for Hearts. A scandalous season. It's way below what should be deemed acceptable at Tynecastle. They've spent a lot of money. You know, they're all excited about the analytics and getting a hold of Brighton's supercomputer, and rightly so, they should be. This should be a club on the up. And we had this conversation, didn't we, about Critchley, Neil Critchley. He's making a habit of not winning the games that they have to win.
Aye.
And that's no position for a Hearts manager to be in. And I think that's why Hearts fans were a little bit concerned going into that game at the weekend, because it happened time and time again. And Saturday was just the latest example. Here's a game you have to go and win, and they hardly turned up from what I saw. You know, it wasn't as if they were bombarding Motherwell and really going at them and taking the game to them. It was, again, a kind of Adam Idah shrug of the shoulders. You know, we might get there, we might not. And that's not good enough from Hearts. It's nowhere near good enough. And
that's the thing.
And it could be worse for Hearts.
Aye.
Because if we're saying that they can't win big games, well, I tell you what, the last 5 are huge.
Aye, there's some coming up, aye.
Because there is a danger. I know they've got a little cushion, a nice points cushion just now, but there's a very real danger. A couple of results get away from you, and the next thing you know, you're above the trapdoor, just and no more. And the relegation playoff spot becomes more and more into view.
I think you make a good point. Obviously, it's one thing not to win at Fir Park, but the fact that it was 0-0, you couldn't even score a goal.
How can that be?
I know. But just finally on Hearts, what is your gut feeling if Tony Bloom, if and when this deal is done, talk about £10 million getting ploughed into the club? Look, it's just my opinion. I could be totally wrong. I don't see Neil Critchley being the man to guide it forward.
I quite like him, and I quite like some of the work that he's done. And obviously, when you think about where Hearts were when he came into the club, there's been improvements.
Aye.
I do think that he probably needs to properly judge him. I think you probably need to give him another transfer window, and give him another transfer window with
That's fair.
a couple of quid in his pocket, and with the analytics to help him. And I think you'll then you're then more able, better position to make a real judgment on him. But what worries me for Neil Critchley is that I think the Hearts fans have already reached their conclusion. A large group of Hearts fans have come to the conclusion that this guy's not going to cut it. And that's a difficult place to come back from.
Yeah.
I think that's where he is, and that's where he's going to end this season. And he better hope that he's capable of bringing something more out of these players, because what's a bad kind of season thus far, a flawed campaign to be sitting in the bottom six going into the last 5 games of the season. Well, what's bad could become catastrophic if he doesn't get an instant bounce out of these players now that they know what they're faced with between now and the end of the season.
The comment here from Kaiser again, he says the decline of Shankland is evident on the form Hearts, and that's the thing to point out as well, because if you'd said this time last year Shankland was going to endure this kind of season, you wouldn't have believed that.
Yeah, Hearts haven't looked after him properly. That's part of the problem. Contractually, just Everton, it just hasn't felt right. There's a sort of, it feels like a disconnect between Lawrence Shankland and Hearts a little bit. I think the effort is still there, but it's just not happening. It just kind of felt since the summer that the marriage was likely to end unhappily. He got a couple of chances at Fir Park that Lawrence Shankland would usually bury, including the one right at the death, where he's kind of screwed it across the face. Last season they were in the roof of the net, weren't they? The bottom corner. It's just not happened, and I think probably never admit it, but I think there might be an element of he's a bit distracted as well, as is only natural. You don't know what your next move is. You don't know where you're going to be. You're in danger your career every time you walk out onto a pitch because you don't have a contract for next season. And all it takes is one bad tackle and that's you.
He scored 4 goals all season, and he hasn't scored what he scored 1 in his last 12, which is it's just crazy.
And it actually underlines what a massive contributor he was last season.
It does.
And the imbalance that Hearts had, that they were so dependent upon him. So the question was always going to be, what happens if Shankland's goal dries up?
Yeah.
Well, you've seen what happens. They end up the bottom six, fighting a relegation battle, and the chances are they're going to lose Shankland. And you watch. I don't know where Lawrence Shankland will end up next season. What I am prepared to wager is, as soon as he's settled and he's ended up wherever he's ended up, he'll start scoring goals again.
I agree.
It's coming. You can put the kettle on for it.
Aye. Before we wrap up, Keith, it's worth visiting the other side of Edinburgh, because Hibs go from strength to strength. They're 1 up against Dundee. Rocky Bashiri has got the goal.
What a season he's having, by the way.
I know. He's becoming a really important player for him.
Well, he's become huge. And it all coincides with David Gray switching to the back 5, because Bashiri didn't look comfortable as in a 2. He looks so much stronger in a 3. And I keep coming back to it. Big Jack Ardale has made an incredible difference. The whole shape of the side is right. It feels balanced. And you just hats off to David Gray. I remember with Swanee and I sat in there just before Christmas time, might have been the end of November, and we were making the point, and I think it was Swanee that said it first, that he would really like to see David Gray given up until Christmas, just to see if he could get through that really problematic period. And you know, I was in agreement with Swanee then. I thought it was the right thing to do. Give this guy a bit of faith, a bit of time, a bit of backing. And they are undoubtedly one of the success stories of this season. But Hearts are free falling into the bottom six, in danger of getting dragged into a situation where they don't want to get involved in. Hibs are absolutely flying and looking really strong now for third place.
Just very finally, before I let you go, Keith, I know you mentioned this earlier in the show, but for anyone that wasn't watching, we've had a plethora of comments along these lines. When's the Rangers takeover getting completed, Keith? I know you mentioned earlier on you think it's pretty close.
I can't say with any great certainty. All I can tell you is that the Times kind of frame that the Americans have been working along all the while was to get it concluded before the end of April. I also believe that Andrew Kavanagh, well, obviously would have wanted to take in the Athletic Bilbao game. I think, you know, it wasn't just here to get a seat in the stand at European tie. I think he was over here to try and conclude. And it does feel very much as if they're moving into the end game now. Where are we? What's the date today, Daniel?
13th.
13th. Well, he's got a couple of weeks then before the end of this month. I would strongly suspect. In fact, if it wasn't concluded before the end of this month, you would start to wonder why. Why not? Yeah. Because all the sort of main contractual agreements have been agreed. There've been handshakes all round. So, you know, I know lawyers like to take their time, especially when the meter's running. Maybe that's part of the problem. But there has to be an element, and I keep coming back to it, there has to be, it's becoming, it was time urgent. It's now starting to become time critical. That Rangers really need to move and start putting plans down for next season if they're going to have a fighting chance. Or if not, what's the point? Because the fans are really excited about this takeover. They don't want to end up with the same group of players turning in the same performances and getting the same results and watching Celtic romp away again.
Yeah.
So, you know, in order for Rangers to give themselves that opportunity, that's what, come back to how we started it. I'd be sitting down with Barry Ferguson and his team coaching staff right now and saying, look, guys, not going to give you a 5-year deal. How do you fancy a 1-year rolling contract? And just set your sights on starting next season and getting us involved in a fight. Because Rangers haven't been involved in a fight for so long. That's what I think I'd be doing. And with each passing day, the situation becomes more and more difficult, more and more urgent, more and more critical. So, yeah, like I said, I firmly believe they're still working towards that timescale of the end of January. The end of April.
It's been a long weekend for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, the end of April. But in order to get there, in order to meet that deadline, well, they're running out of time. Only a couple of weeks left.
Aye. Right. I think that brings us to the end of Sunday's Hotline Live with Record Sport. Thank you so much for all the comments. We really appreciate you getting in touch. We'll be back to do it all at 6 p.m. tomorrow night. We hope you can join us then. Keith, as ever, thank you so much for joining.
And now it's time for the Masters, Daniel.
Do you think Rory will do it?
A Masters prepared. Ed, I think Rory will do it. I hope so. My fear all along has been DeChambeau. He remains a threat, doesn't he? Going into the final round. So, but we've seen Rory in this position, haven't we? And it hasn't always ended well.
I know. I've got my doubts.
They're all saying that he's a calmer, sort of more mature Rory McIlroy. Well, the proof will be in the pudding. And the last, once they get into the turn on the final round at the Masters, wow, that's a tiny little test your mettle, isn't it? It's brilliant. It makes for really dramatic watching. So I'm looking forward to it. Late night, probably.
Aye, absolutely. Well, hope you'll be all right to join us tomorrow at 6 p.m.
I'm sure I'll be fine by then, mate.
And I hope everyone watching at home can join us then too. Thanks for watching. Cheers.